Welcome to Secure Freedom Radio. This is Frank Gaffney, your host and guide for what I think of as, well, an intelligence briefing on the war for the free world. No better a source on matters involving intelligence than our friend Fred Fleitz. He is a career intelligence professional, as a matter of fact, a man who has worked with great effect at the Central Intelligence Agency for 2 decades, working also for John Bolton at the Department of State, and most recently as a professional staff member of the House Intelligence Committee. I'm very proud to say he's a senior vice president for policy and programs at the Center for Security Policy these days. Fred, welcome back. Good to have you with us as always.
Good to be here, Frank.
We catch you, I know, in a Fox studio background in the moment, but we're very grateful to you for taking a moment to talk a bit about the latest developments on the Iran deal. There's some rumoring going on that this is imminent. Fred, what's your current reading?
Well, Omni Sarin, an expert who is in Switzerland right now, in Vienna, sent an email overnight saying that he thinks there are signs there could be a deal on Friday. However, a recent email suggests that maybe that will be pushed into the weekend. Now, President Obama said on Wednesday night that he thought the chances of a deal are less than 50-50. What I'm concerned is that Iran has a new series of concessions they're demanding from the West that I think will be very difficult for the administration to meet. But it worries me that if they're making these concessions, what have we given up so far? Let me tell you what they are real quick. Lifting the arms embargo and ballistic missile restrictions in a UN Security Council resolution, shortening the duration of a deal, loosening restrictions on nuclear research, and this would need advanced centrifuges, changing the terms of how sanctions can be lifted, and barring the inspections of military sites. I think any of these would just be a devastating concession, and the fact that they're being demanded at this last minute suggests to me that we've already made some pretty substantial concessions, and the Iranians are pushing for more.
And, it must be said, the fact that we have made the previous concessions, many of them under the gun of self-established deadlines by the Obama administration, causing them to believe that we will make still more. Perhaps not all of these, but even any of them, as you say, Fred Fleitz, would be a significant problem for the administration in making its case that this is indeed a good deal. As you and I both agree, it ceased being one a long time ago, even back when it was just a framework agreement, let alone what's been done in the meantime. But Fred, one of the things that Omri Cherin, who is of course a friend and colleague at the Israel Project, warned about in connection with some of the deal's more troubling elements, is that the effect of some of the concessions could be to provide a measure of international legitimacy and involvement. For example, with respect to this advanced technology infusion into the Iranian nuclear program, ostensibly for civilian purposes, and the use of international partners for weapons importation into Iran, both of which would make it more challenging, if not vastly more problematic, for a nation like Israel, for example, to contemplate military action against the Iranians. Talk a little bit about that.
I mean, you're touching on a key issue here. What's the purpose of these negotiations? It's clearly not to stop Iran's nuclear weapons program. I think the Obama administration's objective is to somehow draw Iran into the community of nations by letting it have a nuclear weapons program, thinking that they'll start behaving responsibly once they normalize relations with the United States. There's other people who have a darker view and have said that the president wants Iran to become a regional hegemon. I don't share that view, but there's some sensible people I know who are scratching their heads, wondering what is the purpose of talks that legitimizes the nuclear program of a rogue state, a state that has repeatedly cheated on its nuclear treaty obligations. And, for all we know, these concessions are going to go through, that Iran will be allowed to have restrictions against its importation of conventional weapons and its ballistic missile program, that the resolutions barring these things will be lifted.
These are, of course, just the latest problems. Fred, you and I co-authored an article that appeared in the Jerusalem Post this week about 9 national security requirements or red lines of what should be in the deal, none of which is at the moment, let alone these new concessions, if they're actually going to be made. Taken in toto, what is your current reading of the likelihood an agreement with these defects will, in fact, pass muster on Capitol Hill?
Right now, I don't think it's going to pass muster on Capitol Hill. I'm very confident that it will be decisively rejected by almost every Republican and quite a few Democrats. I think there's growing bipartisan opposition to this agreement. And these recent demands for concessions by Iran, I'm hoping will push Democrats who are on the fence and really want to stand by the president. I'm hoping it's going to push them to do the right thing and just say, I'm sorry, Mr. President, I've had enough. This agreement is bad for the United States.
Of course, Fred Fleitz, the problem is not simply that a majority is required, but a supermajority is required in both houses of Congress under this so-called Corker-Cardin bill. And a lot obviously will be riding on presumably that hard core of Democratic stalwarts who will see their duty as being to support the president no matter how bad this deal is going to get. This is where the work you're doing, Fred Fleitz, at the Center for Security Policy, and the rest of the team that you're helping lead is of incalculable importance. And I want to commend to people not only the op-ed at the Jerusalem Post, but also the rest of the content, including some terrific videos on all of this, available at IranTruth.org, a new sort of centralized locus for information about the Iran deal. Fred, one other facet of all of this, of course, is the presidential election coming up in 2016. This deal is, it seems to me, likely to feature prominently, certainly in the months ahead, if not all the way through this election. What have we heard from the presidential candidates, both on the Democratic side as well as the Republican side, about the president's concessions and misbegotten notions more broadly?
This diplomatic mess began under Hillary Clinton, and she still is standing behind the nuclear talks. But just about all the Republican candidates have been pretty strong against the talks. Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush, Governor Huckabee, Governor Walker. I'm heartened by what I've been hearing. Rubio has been running some very good ads against the agreement on television, which I think are just outstanding and show that he gets it. I think Bush gets it. I haven't heard Mr. Trump or Rand Paul recently speak out against this agreement, but for the rest of them, I call it the arena has been very, very good shooting down this agreement. So I'm heartened that most of the Republican candidates, if not all of them, get it, that this is a bad deal.
And they will, of course, have the bully pulpit to be discussing it in the days ahead. And Fred, to the extent that there are further concessions made, one of your areas of expertise, of course, has been in verification as a result of your deep drill down on all of these issues inside the intelligence community. Is there any sense that what the president has been doing lately is actually enhancing the verifiability of this agreement?
No, Frank, we're moving in the other direction. The Iranians have demanded that military and non-declared sites be off-limits to IAEA inspectors. And we know that Secretary Kerry had floated a proposal to do this. Now, Supreme Leader Khamenei turned it down, which is a little perplexing. The Iranians are still pushing for all military sites to be off-limits. If that is the case, we'll have no confidence that this agreement is holding and that Iran has stopped pursuing nuclear weapons.
And needless to say that the other pieces of this, the arms imports, the ballistic missile upgrades, the ongoing support for terrorism, the ongoing subversion of the neighborhood, threats to us, among other things, will also be things that will be going forward to our great detriment. Fred Fleitz, thank you for the great work you're doing these days at the Center for Security Policy and that you've rendered to our country in the past. We'll look forward to talking with you more about it in the days ahead. Next up, we'll talk with Ambassador Yoram Ettinger from Israel. We'll get his take on how this looks from that side of the pond and more straight ahead.